Welcome to Scene, where the art world meets the real world. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with emerging and established artists to offer a genuine glimpse into their lives and minds, all in an authentic and totally straightforward manner. I'm Carrie Scott, your host. And with 2 decades of experience as a curator and art historian, I firmly believe in the transformative power of art, if it's seen. Today on the Scene podcast, I'm joined by Dan Webb, a full-time woodcarver that I think I have known for 20 years, but we'll get into that. He's a sculptor who has quietly but consistently made me astonished, honestly. And before you even listen to this episode, hit pause, go look at his work. You will not believe what he's able to do with his hands, with raw materials, and all the rest. Dan's represented by Greg Kucera Gallery in Seattle and is exhibited widely across the United States and internationally. I'm talking Smithsonian New Museum, Seattle Art Museum, Portland Art Museum. The list goes on and on. He is so impressive. And honestly, I have been such a huge fan that I'm kind of freaked out about interviewing him today because, when you know someone really well, you know the practice really well, I'm sure to ask all the wrong questions. That said, I am really so pleased to be sitting down now on the occasion of his 5th show at Greg Kucera in Seattle, and to kind of find out what he's up to, where he's up to, and what is occupying his mind and practice at the moment. So welcome to the podcast, Dan Webb.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And really, truly, I am so thrilled you are here. I can't remember, though, how we first met. I mean, we met, obviously, when I was in Seattle during grad school, but I don't know how we first met. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that you were one of those wonderkind curator types to be who got a job at a gallery, and you were young and always pinging around the room making connections between people, and that's kind of a superpower, you know? It's one that I wish I had, where you kind of are able to curate people coming together and talking with each other, when I think most people are sort of in their shells and are not able to do that. So it was great, and you were always able to do that and kind of memorable to a lot of people for doing that early on.
That's so not how I remember it. Because I can remember the first time I saw your work, uh,
Mm,
which is interesting, right? And probably
mm,
makes sense given what I do with my life. But it was at the studio. Um, and because you shared studio space with one of the artists that I worked really closely with, or you were in the same building.
mhm,
And I just remember walking by and being like, pardon me, this has no business being made out of wood.
mhm, mm,
Because you make things impossible. And I wanna know,
mm,
how on earth did that even start? And, like, why did you
mm.
turn to wood in the first place?
Right. Well, I live in the Pacific Northwest section of the United States, where the history is when white folks showed up, they mowed all the trees down. It was about resource extraction. And a lot of the materials that I use are the remnants of that. So they're um, cast offs from buildings that were made and were torn down. So there was this real available, incredible material that was everywhere, these giant beam sections, and they're really cheap. And as this sort of provisional thing, I was really amazed by this material. So that was the first thing. And the second thing is that um, you know, you do the thing that you're not seeing, but you wish you were seeing. And where I grew up on the West Coast and in Alaska was just this really sort of slapdash kind of DIY way of making structures, making houses, making everything. There's this proto hippie, proto, explorer mentality of what things look like here. And I wanted to reach back towards people that actually knew how to make stuff. And so I was really interested in how you far that you could take that material. Could you make a silk purse out of a sow's ear kind of a thing? So I started with really thinking about the ways that people all over the world have really made stuff. Everywhere there's trees, there's a tradition of woodworking. And there really is here. There's just the most amazing carving tradition here from Tlinkits and Haida folks and just lots of indigenous folks. And just really starting with that elemental idea of how can you use what's around you to really make the most incredible thing that you can think of is just a really expansive way to start. So I stepped into that.
Okay, I believe you, but I don't know
Okay.
how you get to be so good at it.
Mm.
Because as in the craft part, and I don't wanna spend ages on this, but I think that's what drew me to the work in the first place.
Mhm.
Hands emerge out of trees for you. You can make a balloon out of a tree. Like,
Mm.
things
Mhm.
that, are soft and squidgy are somehow made out of a tree. Like, how do you actually get this good? Just doing it? Like, hours and hours and
Mhm.
hours?
Hours and hours and hours. The thing that I was seeing was kind of, in contemporary art is something called de-skilling, which is kind of pushing an idea forward and removing the hand really intentionally, really making it a really wink, nudge, nudge. It's about the idea I'm really smart, and if I, make anything, I've hired somebody to do it. So that was sort of the contemporary lexicon that I was stepping into. And then there was another one that was native or craft based that was about I really am super good at making stuff and you know it's such a different a- w- way of thinking about it. So I was really familiar with stepping into something in a contemporary context and making it look like art, and I really wanted to subvert that and challenge that. So you challenge who comes before you, and who came before me were people that went to graduate school and wanted to look like they were 12 years old living in the South. And so I think I really pushed off against that aesthetic and that agreement. So I went another way.
So, almost a reaction to this, like, a lack of beauty and refinement, maybe?
Well, again, I mean, I'm just trying to make the thing that I'm not seeing that I wish I was. I always describe my work to people as being sort of like the hobo carving something on the porch, like the chain on the porch, the American vernacular carver meets a real European academic carver. And if they came to get together and had a baby, that's kind of what I'm doing. There's a lot of other traditions that I wish I could draw from. I wish I could, you know, rip off more things that I see from other cultures, but I don't feel comfortable quite doing that. I just remain a super fan. I think Bill Reed is the Michelangelo of this continent. He's a Haida carver who ended up being in Vancouver. Um, and things like that are definitely things that are in my mind that I don't feel comfortable drawing from, but there's a lot of things that I see that sort of filters through into what I end up doing.
I I read a couple times that you describe yourself as a wood carver.
Mhm.
And I'm interested in knowing, like, do well, I'm interested in knowing 2 things. Do you do anything else?
Mhm.
And what does that leave open to you, right? Like, I could imagine you could walk into any room and say, "I'm a sculptor,"
Mhm.
right? But you don't. You sort of grab the wood carver part. Why?
I think wood carving is kind of the North Star. As soon as you say you're an artist, um, there's certain doors that open for you and certain doors that shut for you. I think when you say you're a wood carver, it's it's not as easy to understand what that is. That tradition could be so broad. Um, the other thing that's interesting about being a wood carver is that it's a discipline. It's different than saying you're an artist, where I think the assumption most of the time is, um, I'm elevating my thoughts, I'm elevating me, you know? This is, me filtering the world and talking about the world. I think when you say you're a wood carver, it's not you're a student. You're trying to be good every day. You're just engaging in a discipline. It's a different start. It's a different premise, I think. So I relate more to that. I'm going to work every day just trying to be a little bit better. And along the way, you realize that you just have this really expansive conversation, you know? I don't think there's anything not conceptual about carving wood. I think, the ideas are present, but I'm just really a student of it and really s not the master of it, you know? So, I'm just a going to work every day kinda guy.
Do you think it also gives people an opportunity, or gives the sort of person who might think contemporary art
Mm,
and fine art is not for them,
mhm.
that, like, the medium gives those people access?
Yes, I think that is intentional. I think, contemporary art, which I love, which you love, also gives people lots of latitude to mock it, and I think, it's not undeserved a lot of the time. I think that there is really that level of entitlement and self-involvement that's present in a lot of that stuff. At the same time, you know, it's just the best. It Contemporary art seems to start with the premise of what's possible. What could we do? What's the most interesting thing, you know? And I just love that. It's so freeing, and at the same time, there's definitely a latency in the general public kind of catching up to that. So I think you could acknowledge it or you could be mad about it, you know? I'm just acknowledging it and seeing it as kind of a broader thing, you know? I wanna see art and creativity and whatever it is that I do, not just being for certain people in New York and LA and London and Berlin. I wanna challenge myself to, if it's such a good idea, if it's so universal, can you live in Seattle, Washington, and have those same conversations and have it be relevant here, you know? So, if you can, you know, what does that look like? And so I guess that's the underlying question that I wanna ask.
Is the inverse, though, then also true sometimes, that, like, there's a hierarchy
Mhm.
of mediums? Painting comes first, and, uh, then maybe it's sculpture, and then maybe it's works on paper, and, um, who knows? But do you think that do you think that those scenes, the scenes in London and New York and Berlin, do you think they're ready for a contemporary artist to be using wood this way?
Sure. That's a great question. I I feel like it's on the cusp every year, and I think it sort of moves further away from being true. Um I don't know. Nobody knows anything about what is going on. Maybe you do. Um yeah, I think that it's still the norm if people have highly technically proficient work that they're showing, that they have studio assistants do it, that there's, a lot going into it that's not the actual artist knowing how to do anything. And there are people that are making things out of wood out there, like I've been kind of interested in some of Charles Ray's carvings of the last however many years, but Um, essentially he's asking really amazing craftspeople in Japan to be like a 5-axis router 3D printer for him. So there's this, with all due respect to you, Charles, because you're brilliant, but there's this stiffness to that. And if you're just dictating your ideas, and if it really is stenography, then there's not any improv, there's not any surprise, there's not any way to really understand how to let go of your ego and just go with that material. What is so unpredictable? Where is it going to take you? So,
Well, and that was something I wanted to get into with you because I feel like there's a piece here, like, that I'm gonna say this so ineloquently despite the fact that I'm also staring at my notes, and I at one point thought that this question was shaped well, but I don't think it is. Um, but that, like, wood has its own history. At the moment, we're growing oak trees, like, from little acorns downstairs. I have about
so cool.
5 of them. It's amazing, but oak trees take 300 years to grow, 300 years to thrive, and then 300 years to die, and I keep looking at this little
Mm,
tiny thing that's on our kitchen counter,
mm,
and I have no idea, like,
mm,
it's gonna outlive me, and I do not have land if I can go plant this thing on, so, like, what am I up to? Um, but I imagine that you must bump into that little feeling that I've got with this teeny tiny acorn
mm,
every time you're carving something. So, like, how do you negotiate
mm.
the history that's inherently in your material with what you're conceptually trying to get across to the viewer?
Mm, it's such a good question. I think what's great is that trees actually, of course, live longer than we do, but they are one of the only mediums that I can think of, the only one where you're working with a material that was alive and is no longer. You're really intersecting with its life. You're cutting through winter and spring and fall, and you're seeing the bug infestations, the fungus infestations, if there was a fire, you're seeing the story of this thing's life. And the way that a tree lives longer than us just sort of makes you have to move at the speed of wood. I tell my students this all the time. You kind of have to slow down, and you end up noticing things so much more. And it's something that I think if you don't refer to in the work, it's such a wasted opportunity. And so my work over and over again talks about that ability to freeze a moment or to hold on to that time, and which is the superpower of art, but wood makes it even that much more manifest, I think.
Mm. What Let's talk about time, because I think
Mm,
time comes up a lot for you.
mhm,
Why?
mhm. Um, well, I think it's just something for everybody to think about, but wood kinda drubs it in your face, right? I mean, if like I say, if you are cutting through a tree's life year by year, you're really thinking about it, but when you're working on a being that was 300 years old and you realize that your own experience is just so brief, you know? You're the chipmunk that's running around on this thing, essentially. You're here for a minute. And, anybody that makes art for a while, I think, is aware that there's a different kind of time that you're stepping into when you make art. It lives longer than you if it's good. There's my colleagues are thousands of years in the past. It's such an incredible thing to think of that pretty much exactly what I do is what the Egyptians did, or, you know, when I stood in front of Michelangelo's Moses and alone in a church and right where he was when he carved that thing, I knew what his tools were, I knew how he did it. He was a cranky little weirdo just like I am, you know, didn't we have the same job, you know? He's a little better at it than I am, but,
Debatable.
um, but it's it's kinda great to understand time in that way. This job makes you think about that, and the media makes you think about that. And then, you know, now that I'm old and your own my experience of mortality and people dying and all that stuff, that all gets wrapped up into the work too.
What about hands?
Mm,
So hands also appear a
mm,
lot, whether you're sort of carving a hand, holding something. Um, I mean, there's a number of sculptures, right, where you have hands. Why that
mhm.
motif?
I think hands, first of all, because,
They're impossible.
the there is a technical challenge, but I think everybody has hands. So it really separates it's not a race, it's not a gender, it's everybody. And then everybody has this real tactile experience of being in the world and how this is the original digital technology, you know? Um, how we are the product of the tools that we made and the stuff that we made. And I'm an artist, and it's really pretty obvious for me, but everybody has to negotiate the world tactily and by making in some form. So it's so universal. It's hard to get away from. And I think it does talk about that universality without a lot of the baggage of, you know, gender, race, where you're
But
coming from.
they're not hands. eh, They're hands that are doing things, right?
Mhm.
So grabbing. I think in the latest show, there's a piece that's like clutching. Uh, I don't know what they are, like flowers, right? Or there's another
There's
work where a hand is coming out of raw wood, like it was
Mhm.
born of it. So there's an action there.
Yeah, there's a piece in the show where a hand is holding a bunch of arrows, and it's called "Hold Sharp Things," and, I think they're, um, the I when I gave my artist talk, I almost fell apart talking about this, but I'll just mention it briefly, that there's somebody that I have used their hands and feet a few times before as a model, and that model, um, this year got sick, and I hope they made it all the way to the show, but they didn't. They died a month before the show, and that is his hand, and holding sharp things is what I do for a living, but, um, what does that really mean? And I think holding sharp things means holding on to the memories that are painful a lot of times, and, um, that's a skill that you can gain. It's a kind of a grace that you can, work towards, and so I think the piece wants to talk about that. And again, what a better way to do it than with a hand, you know?
This is I mean, God, the heart of the matter, the heart of your work, or the thing that you do with such ease, and I don't understand how you do it because I think that certainly when I engage with or I look at your work, and for the last however many years it's been from afar,
Mm,
it's always so. I don't wanna use the word poignant because I think people use that word. It's so weighted. So, like, for instance,
mm,
I think last year you put up a piece called "I Love You" that was
mhm,
recently installed at the Tacoma Art Museum, and
mm,
you've carved a balloon, like a
mhm,
heart-shaped tinfoil balloon. I hate those
mm,
balloons. I never wanted
mhm.
one of
Me
those
too.
balloons.
Yeah, right.
Don't
You've been to those kids' parties, they're awful.
right? And I don't let the kids hate those balloons because they know that they're, like, horrible for the planet, and, like, we don't do
Mhm.
balloons,
All of
right?
that. Right.
And then this silly piece comes up on my grid, and it says it's a heart, and you've carved it out of wood, and it looks like it's light, and it says, "I love you." And
Mm,
I just remember sitting there being like, "I wanna touch that, I wanna own
mm,
it, I wanna live with it, I
mm,
want
mm,
that." And
mm,
tell you why, I can't tell you why,
mm,
except that I think you you get right to the heart of the matter of, like, the fleeting seconds that we have to tell people things or to say things or to give gestures, and you make these gestures, whether it's clutching at something
mm,
or handing a balloon that will fall apart in seconds, you immortalize them.
mm. I hope so. I mean, what an imperfect vessel, right? The Mylar balloon. It's just such a mockable, awful piece of dreck that's gonna get tossed away, and how it just becomes this avatar of all of us, you know, and the way that, um, you can't even really take it seriously that it's saying, "I love you." It seems like such commercial dreck, you know? It seems in like, how insincere is that? And I think we all are in that spot. We're all kind of that Mylar balloon, you know, daring ourselves. It was such a dare to me, you know? What if I made this thing monumental? What if I made it out of materials that were beautiful, that stayed there? What if I said I loved you to the whole world? You know, what then? Could I really be that brave? You know, could I really mean that? Could I redeem that balloon and step into what it was trying to do? You know, and it was hard. It was hard to do. So, yeah.
Redeem the balloon.
Redeem myself, redeem, you know, I'm the goddamn Mylar balloon, you know?
I like the idea that you're redeeming the balloon. What about, scale? So you
Mm,
mess with scale all the time, right? There'll be, like, a giant hand. There's one work, like, it's a giant gloved hand holding it's actually not holding anything. There's a big block of sort of raw or burnt wood with it, and it's huge. It's, like, as big as you. W
mhm, mhm.
Why push scale?
Yeah, it seems like it's been sort of an arms race over the last 10 years. Everything's gotten bigger. I do like the idea of that monumental scale. There's a gravitas to it. It's hard to argue with that. You see something that's really big, and it can really affect you emotionally. It affects me emotionally. Have you ever been to it's what is it, the Via Farnese in Rome where there's that giant hand? It's just so good. It's so crazy, you know? How can I get a bit of that gravitas in my work, you know? And how can I do it without assistance or without a budget or whatever? Um, and occasionally people give me giant pieces of wood, and it's just impossible for me to say no to, so it's been great. But it has been a little bit it's gotten a little bit too much. You know, the last thing I did for the Seattle Convention Center was 21 feet tall and fused glass and carved madrone with steel in it and blah, 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 and cranes and engineers and crews of people and all that. So I'm really trying to scale back, and my current show is really that put into practice, I think. So small and on the wall is what I kept saying, you know. I wanted to kind of return it to a human scale version.
I wanna talk about what it feels like to have your 5th show at a gallery, um, because I don't think we talk enough about, like, what it is to have a long-term relationship with a gallery.
Mm. Mhm.
Um,
Nobody knows about it anymore. Mhm.
mm, mm-mm.
Mm.
Uh, so I wanna talk about that, but first I wanna talk about, because you just gave me the door, um, your use of words.
Mm.
You're very good with words, you make signs often,
Mm.
and that brings
Mm.
in, like, another element or another medium sometimes, um, but you're really playful with words,
Mhm.
uh, and I sort of wondered if the words come to you first,
Mm.
or if it comes to you in the making, like, do things kind of emerge as you're going?
That's another good question. The word "yes" has come up a lot for me, and it's kind of a response to Yoko Ono's piece, that she made in the '60s. Um, and I think today we have such a complicated relationship with that word "yes." You could say "yes," and it could be so joyful, and it could be, you know, this super positive thing, but now I think you could say "yes" in a way that's resigned or coercive or under duress. It's 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 this teetering moment. It's something is about to happen, but you're not sure if it's good or bad. It's just moving forward, you know? So, I do use the word "yes" quite a bit, and I use it as that place in the middle before something happens. And now I'm using a lot of ampersands, which is this abstract form that's not a word but means "and." So I'm trying to put an ampersand at the end of that "yes" now, to be a little bit more intentional about "yes," and to be intentional about what is the next thing. Um, there w there was a piece in my show called, "You Have Time," that lights up and looks like a sort of roadway sign on the West Coast of the US. It's really sort of drawing from that language, that lexicon. And it's really a dare, you know? Do you have time, and time for what? You know? And you have time is kind of a dare because I always say to myself, I don't have time for that. I can't do that. You know, there's a lot of can't and I don't, and I don't have, you know, um, but you know, in this last year, with my dad dying and my mom dying, I've been around people on hospice. They have time. People on hospice have time. People on hospice are making choices about what to do with their day and how to find joy. You know, what's my excuse? So I think a lot of times we get into a situation where we feel like we don't have as much agency as we actually do. And I think that the idea of the show really relates to that. It's called Yes Bellier, and it's a portmanteau of Espalier and yes, of course. And yes, you know what that means. Espalier, do you know what that is? It's it's a structure that holds a fruit tree flat against the wall. So it makes this really unruly three-dimensional thing into a very ruly, orderly two-dimensional thing.
Great for apple trees.
Great for apple trees. The idea is, how do you live within a structure and find your agency within that structure? And how do you find those moments of improv and those moments of you being able to say yes to things within a structure that you didn't make it. It's just there. You have to accommodate it. How do you find joy within that structure? So the whole show is really making these frames starting on the outside and then figuring out whatever was on the inside from the starting from the outside and moving inside.
I think that, I think that's the grace of what you do, is that my god, my voice is wavering, like, that there's the grace in what you do is that you make us feel things, but, um, I think because of your material choice that you're taking like, you're exposing the innards of a tree, and
Mm,
it's the parallel to, you know, the work's vulnerable in concept, but and in material,
mm,
right? And so it like, you can't help but feel that,
mm, mm, mm.
not a question. You're just really cool, Dan Webb.
Right back at you, Carrie Scott. I mean,
Yeah, it's really cool. Um, I'm conscious of time, and I know that our listeners love it when we keep these to under 40 minutes, and we're right on
yeah.
hovering on that. Um, so I do wanna know, what is it like, uh, showing it at Greg Kucera Gallery 5th time and however many years on? Um, does it feel different? Does it feel the same? Is it kind of business as usual? What's it feel like?
No, it feels, it feels like a relationship and how there's certain people in your life that have really been your witness over time. And the long relationships you have are really special in that regard, And Greg and Jim and Carol have really believed in me and what I've done and have provided a platform to me to really have a conversation over time that has grown and deepened. And they allowed that to happen. And there is no shortcut to being an artist. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of deep diving into yourself to do this shit. And having somebody believe in your process and believe in what you're doing is just an invaluable gift. So, um, I I don't know what it's like for younger artists to not have that, um, because it really is a thing where there's not there's not a lot of wonderkins that are 21 years old that are artists. Maybe pop singers are talking about, their puppy love, their loving and losing and all that stuff. But it's really different as an artist, where it's not that. It's just a different kind of thing that you're talking about. So, it just takes time. It takes a lot of time. So I feel really lucky to have the relationship that I do with the gallery that shows my work. and the other galleries that I've had have been really similar, have been cut from that same mold. And I'm not you. You tell me. I'd love to ask you what is that still a thing? Uh, do galleries just pick the hot thing of the moment and not sign anybody to a contract? I mean, is that how it goes?
No, I think galleries are still interested in proper, in-depth relationships, at least the good ones and the
Mm,
ones that I know intimately. Um,
mhm,
I think all this the sort of more collaborative model between mid-tier galleries and blue chip galleries is actually even strengthening that, so that the mid-tier galleries can kind of keep um, those artists who have been part of the program when they were emerging and into mid-career, and then when they're about to get snapped up. So you're seeing, that new model take place, like with Hannah Berry's program, being kind of embedded in the Hauser and Wirth program. She probably
mm,
wouldn't like that I said it like that, but with some of her artists, that is what's happening, and it's great because it allows Hannah to continue having relationships with artists that she's supported since the beginning. So more of that, please, art world. Uh, I think it, I also, visually, I think it's just nice to see um, an artist kind of progress in a program, or evolve in a program over a number of years, just because there's a familiarity there, right? It's like,
mhm,
um, in the way that we'd like seeing art, because I haven't been back to Seattle often and haven't seen your work in person, to be able to see it at Greg's and sort of, uh, I can I get a sense of not scale, but like I can kind of place it in a way that I wouldn't be able to if it was in some other white cube space that I
mhm,
didn't know. I'm not saying that all that well, but yeah, I don't know. I watch your career from afar, and like I said, it'll uh just every time grabs me. Um,
mm,
and I love what you do, and I'm so pleased that yeah, I still get to have a relationship with you across
mm.
the internet.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really good. Mm.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. The show is up, right, for a couple more weeks.
Yeah, the show's up for a couple more weeks. Mhm.
Great. So people must go and check it out. I hope it's a roaring success, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Well, so good to see you, Carrie. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Scene Podcast. If you liked what you heard, I'd love it if you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to connect with us between episodes, follow us on Instagram at WatchSceneArt. I'm Carrie Scott, and I'll see you next time. Get it?